I'm going to be talking to you about medical information technology and more specifically the impact you guys can have in the future and the terrible impact you're already having. This is a general outline of my talk, and as you can see I'll be covering a number of topics, including, as I've said, how young people are ruining healthcare and how you alone can fix it. I'm going to go on to some interesting topics like personalized medicine, and I'm going to talk about a variety of technologies you may never have heard about before. I'm going to try and make a few analogies to help you understand some of the concepts of high-end research in this field. So what your teachers may be expecting me to talk about is this: the digital revolution in healthcare. Probably you all know that hospitals have been on paper-based forms for a great long time, and hospitals today use digital records for most everything. Not all hospitals, but the highest end hospitals use digital records in every discipline of medicine, and it allows us to do cool things like video conferencing diagnosis, so a doctor across the country can diagnose a rural patient. We can put together repositories of medical data, images, video like cardiac scans, which allow us to see a person's heart beating inside their chest. It's all very incredible sort of stuff. And of course we can do pathfinding to guide ambulances through traffic in the most optimal way. It's all great uses of IT, obviously, but there's one thing that all of these things on the slide here have in common. And if you could just unmute them, please. I'd like the people to sort of give some idea of what they think all of these things have in common.
Unmute themselves.
Yeah, sorry. Do unmute yourselves. Anyone can answer. It's in fact, I'd love silly answers. Just give me anything. Because it's kind of a trick question. So the question is, what do you think these things have in common? What would you say? See, I'm getting all of these technical issues out of their way early so that we can start communicating a little as we go through the talk, yeah? So I do expect you guys to talk back a little bit. But for now, I'll answer my own question.
Computers and the web.
Perfect, yeah, so all of these things are IT initiatives that help medicine. But there's one other thing they all have in common, and it's this. Every single one of these things can be done by a Year 9 student. Let me explain. Video conferencing, yeah? Connect doctors and patients. If I were to take one of you guys, put you in a room with a doctor and a patient, and they tell you, here's our problem, we need to be able to do some sort of diagnosis over a long distance. You're going to say to me, hey, why don't you use Skype? Oh, I think, oh great, I can do that, and it will solve my problem. To do repositories of digital medical images, Flickr, right? Video, cardiograms, you can throw those on YouTube. Find a way for my ambulance to get to the hospital in the least time possible through traffic, use Google Maps. It's all stuff that has been solved, yeah? We can look up pharmaceutical drugs on Wikipedia and get exactly the information the doctor gets. So, what does that mean? For my talk, it means we can throw all this stuff out because it's not relevant to us anymore. Healthcare research especially, has moved on into some really interesting fields, which I think you guys will find a lot more interesting. Doctors call it Healthcare 2.0, and frankly, it marries information technology and healthcare in ways that would have been something we could only dream of years ago. So here's the directions I want to talk about. Here's stuff you might not have heard about, which is going to make a massive impact on the way you live your lives and the way that healthcare is done in the future. I'm going to start with mobile health. My subtitle for mobile health is why everything you know is wrong. Here's why. So, when we talk about mobile health, we need a certain term. It's called black swan events. When a scientist says black swan, it has nothing to do with Natalie Portman. It means an event that is a surprise when it happens. People don't expect it. It has a major impact on the world, and then when we go back and think about it, we think, oh, well, that was inevitable. It was always going to happen. Yeah? So a black swan event is sort of a way for scientists to second guess themselves. And today's biggest black swan in healthcare is the social web. The social web has had a huge impact on healthcare, and people didn't expect it. But in hindsight, it was inevitable. Think about it this way. The impatient patient problem. Doctors hate this. When you get sick, how many of you will immediately hop on Google and type in your symptoms? Yeah? Feel free to unmute yourselves any old time and go, yeah, I do that. Or maybe just put up your hands, because I can see your hands. Yeah? So we tend to find that roughly half of people will do this. They'll just try to close the competence gap between themselves and the doctor. What that means is there's a big gap in how much you know and how much the doctor knows. But you want to know as much as you can before you go to that doctor. So you can say, you know what, doctor, I think I have leukemia. I had some sniffles. Well, people do that, and it's horrible, because doctors really hate it, because, you know, they go to medical school for this. But more importantly, why do people do this? They do it because they're accustomed to having things at their fingertips. Yeah? All of you guys are used to, if you want to go banking or do anything like that, you can go online and just find all the information you need. And that's amazing. It's something we've never really had before. But it means that people want the same kind of flexibility with healthcare, which means you get all these blogs. Oh, sorry, is that a question back there? No? Okay. We've got all these blogs, wikis, podcasts, iPhone apps offering medical information. But what's the problem with that? The problem is any old person can throw something on the iTunes App Store and go, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about your health. Because of that, you get a lot of dangerous information in the public health space. People who have no idea what they're talking about, pushing their agenda, putting up their apps, and people get their information first. That means doctors, medical journals, everyone involved in healthcare needs to put their information in that space, or else they get scooped by people who have no idea what they're talking about. So suddenly, there's this huge space where doctors have no expertise at all, and they have no idea what they're doing, but they need to get into that space. And you guys understand it a heck of a lot better than they do. Medical social networking is a massive thing now. Every hospital has a Facebook page. You can like them if they save your life. I'd like that. You get these crazy social networks like Patients Like Me, which are actually producing better results than some doctors. If you go on Patients Like Me and you say, I have this condition, here's my medical history, is there anyone here like me? And if so, how did you treat it? How well did that work? People talk amongst themselves, and there's really no one more invested in your health than you. These guys can sometimes produce answers that are better than what the doctors are giving. And this is all pure IT. It's done by IT entrepreneurs. Here's what doctors expected e-health, electronic healthcare, would be. Yeah, it's a mess. You can't even read that. It's just all these ideas they had which didn't pan out. The true thing, the true way this has all come together is that, frankly, mobile technology has begun to change the world. Soon, very soon, everyone in the world will have access to smartphones, the internet, and so forth. Even in developing countries, they have already got video phones, they can take pictures, they can share ideas across a great distance. And those ideas have to go somewhere. They have to be collated. They're making a massive difference in the medical field especially, and the big old medical journals have no idea what to do with it. These guys are still trialing, you know, old X-ray machines and going, can this create an improvement in patient welfare? The truth is, they are way behind. These technologies come out much faster than they're able to actually vet them and figure out whether they're any good. So people like yourselves who are just naturally good with technology, you're going to be the new thought leaders in medicine. Those of you who decide to go into IT, you might find that in completely unrelated fields, you're changing the world. And that's what IT does for people these days. Here's a cool little example of how far behind we are, what we think we are. So here, multimedia health records are a big new thing. They're basically, here's what a multimedia health record is, yeah? Here's sort of an 8-month timeline. You probably can't read it, but that doesn't matter so much. The idea is you've got a timeline here, and here's all the medical data one might collect about a single patient during that time. So this patient, for instance, had an X-ray. They found something, and they did a CAT scan. They have a bunch of information from the hospital. They have dental information. They have all of these different doctors have looked at this person, and all of this information is related. And if each doctor had access to all of these other bits of information, they could make a much stronger diagnosis. But in today's world, these things aren't connected. One doctor can't, your cardiologist isn't going to have access to your CAT scans from your radiologist. Your dentist doesn't know that your tooth caries might be digging down into your tooth and causing cancer, God knows. Everything's connected in your body, but the actual medical disciplines themselves are not as connected as they should be. Medical imaging, which creates these crazy big gigabyte diagrams of your body, is becoming a part of almost every medical discipline. And it's costing a great deal of money. All of these advanced medical systems, which are increasingly required for everything, cost massive amounts. And actually, money's pouring in at an incredible rate, and it's soon to become unsustainable. We can't keep growing like this and still have the field move forward. We're going to run out of money eventually. If healthcare continues its current trend, 1 in every $5 spent will go into hospitals. And that just doesn't make any sense, because the way to connect these things isn't by hospitals to do things themselves. It's tech companies like Google and Microsoft are creating services which do this sort of connecting for us. And it makes sense, because IT companies have been doing this their entire operational lives. And this is a diagram Microsoft created. I hope you can see it relatively well. But the general gist of it is that every practitioner should be able to simply take your medical records and upload them to a central storage, so that everyone that you choose to have access to that can. Having this kind of a health vault will make a massive difference to the way healthcare is delivered. People actually tend to expect that that exists already. If you were to go into a Hollywood movie, yeah, and some guy gets flamethrowed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they identify him by his dental records, yeah, you'd expect, you know, oh, there must be some kind of national database of dental records. No, there's not. What happens is the police officer who finds this guy sends around an email to all the dentists he knows, and he goes, do you recognize this bite? And they will manually thumb through their files, and one of them might email back. That's how dental records work. It actually, we expect that there's a lot more IT involved in the system than there really is. But it would be trivial to put that there, and once you did, you could get massive outcomes. Imagine you carry your health records around on a USB stick with you, yeah? If you got in an accident, God forbid, they could just plug that in and see, oh, here's his health data. They can avoid doing things that might harm you because of your prior medical history. Even if they do save your life, you know, working blindly, 4 hours of surgery, you're saved, finally. The next morning, a nurse serves you some peanut butter and you die. Because they didn't know you had a peanut allergy, yeah? It's a silly example, but stuff like this happens all the time, and it doesn't need to. We have devices today which just record everything. You get these watches that can wake you up and figure out when you wake up each morning and how the quality of your sleep is. You've got smartphones that track how fast you're walking, where you're walking each day. You've got, there's billions of these things. Maybe Google them. I won't go into them, but there's just devices that make this kind of data gathering easy. And having this data on hand would make a massive difference, and I'll show you how. Think about it this way. This is an application that IT guys created. And what it does is it looks for bad cells, basically. It looks at images of cells, and it can see whether some of them have abnormalities and some of them do not. The ones that have abnormalities, it can tell 93.18% of the time. How does it do it? Actually, the program has no idea. It's not an intelligent program. It's not using any of the criteria doctors use. All it has is a massive database of bad cell images and good cell images, and it just compares whatever you give it with all of the things in its database all at once. And by doing that, it can get a massive success rate of seeing, you know, this is a bad one, because it looks like all the bad ones. Yeah? You add just a little bit of actual subject knowledge, doctor's knowledge into the system, it could be almost 100%. But what you need to make something like this work is a massive amount of data that it can statistically analyze. You need to know what the bad stuff looks like before you can spot it, which is why these kinds of mobile devices, mobile innovations, and generally mobile healthcare things are incredibly important for the future of healthcare, because they allow us to do this: personalized medicine. What did I say before? No one's more invested in your health than yourself. Personalized medicine refers specifically to using your own information to create drugs and other medical interventions specific to you. Steve might get his own special Steve medicine, Mary will get her special Mary medicine, and there'll be no side effects, there'll be no, and it will only have as much effect as it needs to just cure your problem. That sounds like science fiction, but it's not. Here's a little bit of a fun exercise, yeah? Which of these two people are you most physiologically similar to? Just take a moment for yourselves. We don't need to unmute, but just think about it. Which of these people is most like you? It's a trick question, yeah? Shock horror, you're not either of these people, yeah? However, if you were to walk into a clinic today alongside both of those people and you all complain of the same illness, provided, of course, that you're 18 or over, you will get exactly the same treatment. Mr. Universe over there will have the same pill as you. Children have an exception, yeah? They know that children are physiologically different to one another, and therefore children don't get the same medicines as other children or as adults, because, you know, it could kill them. However, the truth is, we're all completely psychologically different. Mr. Universe would metabolize his pills very differently to you. He might need 17 horse tranquilizers before he'll go to sleep. And you might only need half of one. Now, the problem with adult medicine is that everything's compared to a standard model, the basic generic human. And the generic human is not you or me. It's really nobody. Which is why I sort of used this amusing headline, why you're bad at being human. We're all bad at being human from a drug company perspective because none of us is Mr. Generic. We all have our own factors that make us different. And that's why every drug that you might put into your body has these giant warnings on it. Not because they're terrible at making pills. I pulled out something in Hong Kong, yeah? I was there recently. I got a little sick eating the local food, and I pulled out some stomach pills. I looked at the back of the bottle, and it said, side effects may include death. Oh, I might just write it out then. But why? Why could you die just from taking a stomach pill in Hong Kong? Well, the reason is because drugs, the drugs you get in the pill boxes, are not, in fact, the drugs that are taking effect on your system. The way you respond to drugs is based on a lot of things. Therapeutic drug targets are the specific sort of Mr. Generics that they compare these things to. Drug metabolism is how your body metabolizes a drug, how you digest it, basically. Drug transport is what systems in your body the drug comes through, etc. There's a lot of these things, but here's just a simple example, yeah? When you put a drug into your body, it reacts with an enzyme in your body. That enzyme is just a complex chemical, and these two complex chemicals combine to create a different complex chemical, much like you might have done in your organic chemistry class if you weren't sleeping through it, and this is different for everyone. Your enzymes are not the same as the person next to you's enzymes, and so forth. And none of us really knows anything about our enzymes, but think about it this way. If you take the same aspirin this other person takes, and you have different enzymes, the actual drug that will be taking effect in your system will be a completely different molecule, and it will do something else. That's why some people get sleepy when they take a Panadol, some people get really hyper, and some people it doesn't even work. Yeah? That's why. Most drugs, of course, will generally work on everybody, but these factors affect everyone. Tobacco smoking, alcohol drinking, other drugs, dietary, what you eat, that kind of thing. More importantly, your gender, your race, your age. It may not be politically correct to say this, but whatever drug you take will actually affect you completely differently. If your race is different from someone else's, you would be better off taking a drug specifically formulated for your race. Yeah, because your body is just different. And that makes sense to us on an intuitive level, but how would you, formulate these drugs? How do you make them? What you need to do that is a massive store of information. Put a think about it this way. My natural temperature variance, yeah, what temperature my body is normally, might be quite high normally. So that when someone puts a thermometer under my armpit, if they don't know that I have a naturally high body temperature, they might think I have a fever, when really I'm just at resting state. It's the same for everyone. Our parameters of what's normal for me and you are different. And for us to have different normal states basically means that unless we know them, we can't understand when someone's sick or what's wrong with them when they are. But the more information we collect about someone, the more we can understand. And more importantly, the more we can start to predict how their body will respond to things, which is incredible. You can create essentially a horoscope of what will happen to people. But let me tell you the problem with that. Here's a lovely slide I cooked up just for this circumstance. Sudden cardiac death. Here's just a little tidbit. Your chance of winning the lottery today, suppose you bought a ticket at the start of the day, is exactly the same chance that you will just simply die during this presentation. Which may say something about the chances you have at a lottery, but we don't know what causes sudden cardiac death. People's hearts just stop. It happens. But one thing we do know about sudden cardiac death is we know how to see it coming. If we have a sensor somewhere on your, if we can measure your heartbeat, say your watch is measuring your heartbeat all day, your smartphone can analyze your heartbeat, and if you have the same amount, if you have an irregular heartbeat, it can tell you before you die, about 30 minutes before, hey, you should go see a cardiologist or you'll just die. The thing is, most people tell me that if the app were to tell them, oh, you're going to die, they're going to go see a cardiologist. Yeah, you'd be silly not to. But it's much more realistic to say that a application on your iPhone, for instance, might tell you the chances you have of developing a certain ailment. And when we start to get into that, we realize that people switch off. They don't want to think about this kind of thing. Here's a fact. If you sit down for 3 hours or more, just habitually watching television, your chance of heart disease goes up by 64%. Now, that's the kind of statistics that makes people go, oh no. But then they don't do anything to change their behavior because, well, it's 64%. I'll take my chances. I want to watch more TV. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's human nature. But that means that however excellent our therapeutic drug models and so forth, however much we know about our personal behaviors and so forth and what health outcomes they create, even the best IT can't convince us to take action. Think about this. Everyone put your hands up. If I could get just all of the people in the class to put your hands up, if you don't put your hand up, you're not playing, you lose automatically. Now, just put your hand up, and if you don't get 8 hours of sleep every night, just put it down, yeah? You just put your hand back down if you don't get 8 hours of sleep every night. Suppose you play Halo into the night quite frequently, yeah? If you don't exercise daily for at least an hour, you can put your hand down again. And finally, if you don't eat 2 serves of fruit and 5 serves of vegetables per day, which is what Australian nutritionists recommend, if you don't do that, put your hand down. Now, teenagers tend to live a little more healthy than some of us because their parents sort of force them to eat their greens. But I can guarantee that most of your class still has their hands down. And guess what? Those few simple things are linked to a huge amount of health conditions, more than you could possibly imagine. Less fruit and veg in your diet, low exercise and so forth, creates much greater chances of coronary heart disease, obesity, tiredness, cancer, muscle deterioration, and sleep deprivation on its own just has this massive host of problems. And if you don't get all 3 of those things, your chances increase of getting mysterious ailments like sudden cardiac death. People know this, yeah? All of us know that we should be eating better, we should be sleeping more, and so forth. But the information overload gets to be a bit too much. Information technology makes it easier for us to turn that sort of knowledge into understanding. And that's where IT can benefit healthcare the most. Put it this way. it's not just about developing personal medicines based on your model of how you personally live. It's about creating interventions that allow you to be healthier without making a giant imposition on your life, without you having to watch for a billion different ailments every day. Because we can't expect people to make these kinds of lifestyle changes, but we can expect that if they have something in their environment that sort of thinks for them, they can create these changes automatically. Here's a cool analogy. We all know cars, yeah? Cars are quite complicated. They have a billion systems in there. They're a bit like your human body, but the one thing we know about a car that's different to you is your car is constantly recording everything that happens to it. If you plug something into a thing under your dash, you can actually pretty much figure out your oil pressure for the past year. And a mechanic can look at all that massive amount of information and immediately see a pattern that tells them what's wrong with your car. Why don't we have that for people? Put it this way. The one component in a car that we know nothing about, the biggest safety risk, is the dude behind the wheel. We know next to nothing about that one component. But why? Unmute your mics and give me some ideas here. If we had a smart car of the future, what kind of things could we record about the person in the car? Just throw out anything. I can't hear you. I do notice some muttering.
If you cough or sneeze a lot?
Yeah, your car could just listen for sneezing. Absolutely. Like, your car has microphones and stuff in it already, right? Sometimes you have hands-free phones. Those can listen. Other ideas? I'll throw some out for you. You're sitting in a big old chair, right? Suppose you put a scale under the chair. That chair will be weighing you every time you sit down in it. If you simply kept a record of your changes in weight over the course of a long period, it allows you to understand what's causing your changes in weight. If you have a bender the night before and your car tells you you've gained 5 pounds overnight, or kilograms, you know, we're in Australia, then you understand, you know, going on a bender equals more fat equals I don't want to do that. It just makes sense. It's feedback. It's not just random information. The car is telling you, look, stop going out with your friends. And, you know, whether you listen to your car is up to you. But this kind of thing can be done with anything. Microsoft did something with video games where they linked someone's avatar in a video game to their personal physiological state. Yeah, if you were this guy, your body in the game would look like this guy. And it doesn't matter how much you play the game, your guy won't get any stronger or smarter unless you, in real life, get stronger or smarter. And Microsoft patented this because guess what? It's a great idea. People actually find that this kind of motivation works really well. Yeah? And think about this. Here's a SIM pill. If you stick a SIM card in just about anything in your life, that thing becomes something that can check up on you. The SIM pill is a pill container. When you open it and you take your pill, it tells your doctor, this guy took his pill. If you didn't take your pill, it doesn't tell him, and your doctor will call you and say, take your pill. Yeah? It makes sense. And you can do this with anything. Information technology makes it easy, right? Smart toothbrush. You can buy this on your just in your supermarket today. It's already on the market and it tells you, you're holding me wrong. You're holding me wrong. Okay, that's better. Now brush for 2 minutes. You didn't brush for 2 minutes! It's annoying and I don't like it in a toothbrush. But you can see how that kind of feedback, when you're doing the activity, is valuable. And it doesn't impose on your life. It doesn't mean you have to suddenly take care of all this extra stuff. It just happens as you go. You have these Nike shoes that partner with your iPhone. When you run, it logs your running. Yeah? It's beautiful, and it makes us healthier because we don't have to think about it. The stupid phone will think about it. My shoes will think about it. And that's exactly what we need. And a smart medical home is something they built in Berkeley somewhere, which was the absolute extreme of this. I don't recommend this, but they stuck computers in all the walls, and literally everything in the house basically went, hey, your blood pressure looks bad, or your mirror said, hey, you look a little pale, and is that a melanoma? Right? It's terrible. I don't like it. But think about just how helpful it can be, especially if you're an old person. Yeah, you fall down in your house, the house will call the ambulance. You don't need to worry about it, therefore you can live at home for longer and be healthy. Smart objects replace doctors. You don't have to go to a hospital because you never get sick, because the moment you look pale, your mirror tells you about it. IT guys are going to replace doctors in the future. So if you're looking at being a doctor, forget it. Here we are. The tricorder, yeah? It's a little of a dated reference, but if you've seen Star Trek, they hold out these things and they go, wah, 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 and they know everything about the person. It was science fiction years ago. It happens now. It's powered by your tears. I'll tell you what that means. One second. Here. Body area networks. Smart shoes, smart clothing, smart watch, smart everything are linked up all over your body, yeah? These things communicate with your phone. They have them now. The researchers are wearing them. Those guys look a bit dorky now, but in time, they will look like normal shirts. They're connected to a network. That network runs through your phone. If they find something wrong with you, they will call your doctor, or you can just walk into the hospital and they'll read right out of your smart clothes exactly what's wrong with you. Yeah? Right now, you can interface in Japan. You can wave a smartphone to pay for stuff. In the future, you can wave a smartphone to tell your doctor exactly how your weight has changed over the last 50 days and why you're feeling sick. But there's more to it than that. They have technology now called microfluidics, where they can make tiny chips. It's like you can take a computer and compress it down into a silicon chip. You can take a chemistry lab and compress it down into one of these wafers, which is like a laboratory that does one simple chemical test. Combine a bunch of these, stick them in a little bandage, and you've got a single bandage that can replace an entire lab. And you stick this bandage on yourself, it looks at your salinity of your skin, of your blood content, and so forth. Literally, you get hurt, you put this on yourself, it records everything about your health state, and it can upload that to your doctor. You'll be better in no time because you know exactly what's wrong with you. It's like a tricorder, and we already have it. So why aren't we using this technology? Because we need people like you to invent it. Yeah, the ideas are there, all the building blocks are there. You guys are the future. Your doctor is your grandma for these purposes. A doctor has no idea how the world works anymore. And I'll tell you why. Yeah? There's something called web-powered innovation that's making everyone more productive. Doctors are the odd ones out. Think about this. You've probably seen these cheeseburger cats, yeah? Yeah? Richard Dawkins came up with a concept called the selfish gene. It's basically evolution. Think about the evolution of stuff you see online every day, like these cheeseburger cats, yeah? Suppose you got Rick Astley and his Rick-rolling business, and you got these little posters that you find all over the place, demotivational posters. Online, they're mutating and combining at an incredible rate. These things combine into the Rick Astley demotivational poster, and then that combines with some other thing containing ponies, and you get all kinds of a mess. But the best ones always float to the top, and innovation happens like that. It just, things get better because people are constantly sharing information. And right now, we can get all that information for free. Programmers creating open source software have these whole family trees. Their whole software evolves. Artists connect to these digital art communities, and you just type in, you know, orange cats, and you see all the latest artistic innovations to do with orange cats, and you can make something of your own that builds upon these and makes it better. But if you're even if you're in fact grandma, yeah, grandma, if she does knitting or canasta, she can look up the best moves online and improve on the state of the art. Whereas a doctor has no such luck. A doctor works alone. They're the solitary genius. They don't often work together. They're like ninjas. The only doctor we can usually name is Dr. House. Yeah? If you can name more than that, great. You watch Grey's Anatomy. However, doctors aren't savvy about high technology and the internet. Not even Dr. House, yeah? And you know how Dr. House works if you've watched the show. He just takes stabs in the dark. We're going to try this. Oh, it's killing him. Let's try this. Also killing him. Let's try something else. But if he had that kind of information at his fingertips. If he knew that you're, lactose intolerant or whatever, he wouldn't try that thing to begin with. He could jump straight to the right solution, or at the very least have a much better chance of getting it right. Think about the systems that doctors use when they're typing on a little computer and you're at the GP. It looks like MS-DOS, yeah? They didn't have the internet when they invented that thing. And doctors are slowly moving into the new world, but you're already there. You know how this kind of data just makes everything better. You know how to collaborate with people all over the world because you do it just when playing Xbox games. You're perfectly positioned to improve on the kind of research that's going on today. And you don't even know it. People think of this Eureka Myth, yeah? How does science work? People have this young Einstein thing. Yeah, Isaac Newton had the apple fall on his head. He suddenly had a genius idea because he was a genius. And so, great, everything is solved. Yeah, E is MC squared. It just came out of Einstein's head because he's brilliant. No, that's not how real science works. But most people think it is. The way science works is this. As Newton himself said, I've seen further by standing on the shoulders of giants. And the shoulders of giants, what does he mean by that? It means he's building on the work of people before him. And we have the potential now, the information, to build like we've never built before. There are a lot of giants out there in every field. It's just a little hard to find them at the moment. They write these dry scientific papers in specialist publications. But that's changing now. Everything's going online and it's video. You can literally go to Jove right now and you can have a scientist sit down and explain his theories to you in video. You could see him do it. And if you don't understand what he's talking about, well, you could go on Wikipedia. Want to learn quantum mechanics? It's on Wikipedia. Go nuts. If you don't understand it, ask the foremost expert on the planet. You know what? He's probably on Twitter and you know how to talk to him. We've never had anything like this in the history of humanity before. And as people who have grown up with this stuff your whole lives, you're probably smarter than we are. I'm not afraid to say it. So come build on our ideas. This is the kind of stuff that changes the world. And you can be a part of it. All you need to do is ask the right questions and go to university. I'm going to jump to my reference slide now. You can basically read more about any of this stuff in the references I give you here. And of course, the notes are available for you online through the Bridges website.